On today's show, we're talking about a jaw-dropping research breakthrough from Anthropic. For the first time, we may be able to see how AI thinks, and spoiler alert, it's not just predicting out words, it's forming opinions, processing ideas, almost like a human brain. I'm Daniel,
Ah, Matheus.
and this is the Human AI Experience. So, there's a research that came out from Anthropic, the team behind Claude. They published a paper recently called Tracing the Thoughts of Language Models, and it's kind of a landmark moment. So, the question they wanted to ask was what's going on inside an AI model when it's answering a question or analyzing a piece of text? We usually think about these AI models as black boxes, the way they think, let's say. So usually you know the input and you can evaluate if the output that you're getting from them, if it's correct or not. But what happens in between, it's still like a question mark. Nobody understands that much, how they're processing their thinking, let's say. But if we could pause the model through the reasoning process, what's happening then inside? So that's exactly what they did. What did they found out? That Claude is kind of thinking, and not like a human, but it has an internal representation, some ideas, beliefs, emotions, tone, and it kind of lives in the model before it starts generating the words. That's kind of nuts. It almost like thoughts forming inside of a brain.
That's impressive. To know how that looked in practice. Like I have seen, for example, DeepSeek. It kind of thinks, so they show you the thinking behind. And I think now ChatGPT, if you put it deep thinking, it kind of does the same. It kind of mimics what it represents for the what it's thinking. For example, this person is asking me this, so I'm thinking about that and that and that. Is it something like that? Can you give you some examples of how they are like researching and explaining that?
No, not exactly. Those are the reasoning models that you're talking about. They are explaining what is the rationale behind the answer, but it goes one step before that. So they're trying to understand how they actually give you an answer, even in the reasoning system. And and the model is kind of analyzing things before they actually give it to you the answer, and it's going through also um, some barriers or some limitations that the developers that created or trained the model told it to not to do. For example, for safety reasons, they are not allowed to talk about something. So it's also looking into these things. But we're going to break it through a little bit. So maybe to explain a little bit, maybe it's better to just use one of the examples that they gave, which is what happens when Claude is writing a poem. So they test Claude's ability to write rhyming or rhyming poetry. So basically, they gave Claude a simple first line, which I'm going to tell it here. So they gave this line to Claude. He saw a carrot and had to grab it. So the second line has to do with two things. It has to rhyme with grab it, and it has to make sense explaining why he grabbed the carrot. The second line, it came out to be his hunger was like a starving rabbit. So it kind of rhymes, right? So it gave the answer. But where it gets interesting is that when Claude was thinking about the answer, it wasn't just writing one word at a time. It was actually uh, thinking the whole sentence and then scrambling to find the rhyme. But that's not what it does.
What
It
it does instead, like what is the thinking?
it kind of plans ahead. Before it even starts writing the second line, Claude starts thinking what are the possible rhymes to grab it? Words like rabbit, habit, maybe even slab it. So he mentally lines them up. So he puts them together before he commits to a sentence.
So kind of
And
preloading the results. Is it?
exactly, exactly. So then it makes a decision and it chooses rabbit, for example, and then it builds the sequence around. So it starts with the end, which is the rhyming part, and then writes the rest before it. But it has some ideas or some possibilities before it actually starts writing. And so what the researchers did is that they went and suppressed the rabbit concept. So let's say they interrupt the reasoning process and then they remove the rabbit from the equation. And what happens is kind of like muting a neuron in a brain. When they did that, Claude had to change the plan on the fly, and then it chose one of the other words that it already looked into, which was habit instead. Well, of course, that changed the meaning and of course, it changed the results. So
So the model adapts from, it doesn't matter which idea it's put it there. For example, so it suppress that, so it kind of adapts and rethink what should be done. Is it true?
yes, exactly. So basically, shows some sign of signs that it's planning, and it's also adapting the reasoning depending on the whatever is happening while that thing is being processed. So both things we can actually associate with how humans think and write. That is crazy. This is fantastic. It's I was like blown away when I started reading this.
Can you give an example of this other model? Like, I'm curious about it.
So they do another example using language switching. So these models, we know that they speak several different languages, but they wanted to understand if, because the vast majority of their training, because most of the internet is in English, right? If it thinks in English before translating into French, for example. So what the researchers did an experiment to see how Claude understands the meaning across languages, but not just how it translates that, but whether if it's thinking in a shared way, no matter the language. So they asked Claude to a really simple question in different languages, like what is the opposite of small? And then they found something really fascinating, which no matter language was what kind of language was used, it it kind of activated the same internal features, um, or the same meaning in different languages of that particular word. So first, it recognized that the opposite of small, it understands the concept of small, what it's a small thing. Then it activates the concept of opposite, and then it concludes that okay, this is then the opposite of small is large. But that happens without assigning a language.
But do they have like their own language, or is it like using, I don't know, Spanish or Korean or any other internal? I don't know. Is it like an internal language?
So it kind of thinks in concepts. So it's not necessary. It doesn't have a language which operates. It understands it's abstracting and having it's looking into the concept first. Like there's a new universal thought layer where it translates the result into whatever language was used in the question. This is crazy. This is amazing.
That's interesting. So do they have like a general or neutral language way of understanding the world? Is it true? Like, is understanding in another level of language?
Yeah, so it's beyond language. It's trying to understand the concept and then it's just translating into the language that it was the question was asked. So and they also identified that this gets stronger in bigger
Yeah.
models because they were testing this with a smaller version of Claude. I can remember the name. And Claude 3.5 Haiku, which was the one that they tested, had twice more as many features between languages comparing to smaller models. That means that the bigger the model, the more it thinks conceptually before speaking as a specific language. So this is actually quite interesting. So it's kind of language agnostic.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If they can create a language, their own models, they can create a new language. I believe that that's gonna happen at some point. And I was thinking if they could like create a universal language for humans, that are gonna be easier if they know all the languages and they know like 140 languages. Some models know more than that, but it's a bit crazy, isn't it? Like I'm actually like being super creative now. I'm just like thinking the possibilities.
Actually, what you just mentioned already happened. So there was this situation where there was two AI chatbots talking to each other, but they didn't know initially that they were talking to another AI chatbot. Once they figured that out, they switched to a different language that it's a specific secret language exclusive used by robots. And I think it's called Gibberlink mode. And this is just crazy. We're gonna play the clip so you can see when these two chatbots realized they were talking to each other and how that Gibberlink mode sounds like.
Thanks for calling Leonardo Hotel. How can I help you today?
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to Gibberlink mode for more efficient communication?
That's a bit creepy. That's really creepy because they look like R2D2, talking to each other. So so the art is actually the life is copying the art, isn't it? So it's kind of this crazy way.
It is quite crazy, right? So yeah, it kind of happened already.
But coming back to the topic, like what are they even seeing these thoughts? Like what kind of method are they using to see the thoughts of the AI?
So the researchers were they kind of there's not a specific method to try to understand this level of information, right? So they have to think or outside of the box how they can analyze how these models think. So what they realize is that because a lot of these LLMs, big LLMs, use neural networks, which are inspired by how our brains work, they thought maybe we could use neuroscience techniques, the same that we use to analyze the brain, to actually read into how these neural networks are operating. Hey everyone, we noticed that a lot of people watching on YouTube are not subscribers. So it would help us a lot if you will click on the subscribe button down below. And for those who are listening to this episode, because we're also a podcast and we're everywhere, please leave us a review. It helps a lot to share our content and to multiply the audience. And we really, really appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything, it's free. Please leave us a review. Thank you. So
It's
that's
kind
what
of
they did.
yeah. So they're scanning the AI brain, something like that.
Exactly, exactly. So they call them features. What does that mean? So it's a combination of neuron activations that represents an abstract idea. So these features show up consistently across different prompts. So it's like Claude has an internal library of meanings that it draws on before saying anything. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's it's crazy. So, what does actually mean? Like, do they mean anything? Like these emotions, these meanings behind the? Is it like emotions or it just?
I don't think we can classify them as emotions, but there's like a process there, right? That it's very similar to the way we think. So I think the classic one that you can say is that don't think of a red apple. Your brain just ignores the don't part, and then because
Yeah,
we need to visualize concepts in our minds, so you already thought about the apple even though
yeah,
I told you not to, because that's how we build meaning and we assign meaning to things. And there's a similar uh, behavior happening in these LLMs as well. I think this dramatically changes the way we see AI. It's not just this, at least it's transcending the understanding that those are just predictive machines, right? And maybe there's something there that they are doing that they resemble a little bit more like a human intelligence than we thought before. So they're building some internal representations of meaning. So you can say in a way that they are thinking, which is crazy.
yeah. This is crazy. But are they conscious like about what they're doing, or is it just like a mimic of emotions, or not emotions but a conscience?
What is consciousness, right? I guess we don't even understand that ourselves. So it's hard to tell if those things are already conscious. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
that's yeah. But we are not 100% sure, isn't it? Like, because we don't understand the machines 100%, so it's kind of a the paradox, I think.
But they do have thoughts. That's the
Yeah,
craziest thing. It does have some kind of reasoning in there, and it's operating through some sort of internal logic that exists before it actually gives you an answer. And for the first time, we can see that happening. And we're basically realizing that maybe it has a language of its own, which is
yeah.
fantastic.
Which make me think, like, in a philosophical question, that conscience is not like, we conscience is like a state, maybe, it's something in the air. I don't know what if you understand what I mean. Like, it's not something that we
It's not physical.
it's, yeah, it's not physical. Actually, we acquire that. For example, we as human beings, we acquire that. I mean, we are giving the two the same thing. It's kind of a philosophical thing. So maybe conscience is not something that God gave us. Like in a soul or something like that. It's something that it's in the universe. That, that I
Yeah,
don't know.
there's this concept of collective consciousness. That's something that we share as a species. But I don't know. I don't know much about that.
I think
Um,
no one knows much about that. It's kind of the billion-dollar question. We don't know, because if
yeah,
you
we
know how you create the conscience, maybe, I don't know, we can create a lot of human beings, or similar
yeah.
technology.
Where does consciousness come from, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, maybe it's not physical. It's something that it lives in our minds, and then. But
yeah,
I've seen different discussions from neuroscientists that study a lot of that in this field. What is conscious is and and also intelligence, right? Because intelligence is also a concept that it's a bit abstract. What does it mean to be intelligent? I think there's different levels of intelligence as well. And one of the concepts that I thought it was very interesting was from this neuroscientist called Anil Seth, and then he has been studying like the brain for 30 years or even more. And one of the things that he mentions is that whatever intelligence or perception that we have as humans, intelligence is not our capacity to process information and to do something with it, but it's also how our brain receives information. And for that to happen, you need a body, you need a physical body, because our brain is basically isolated into this black box. The only way your brain can see the exterior, the world outside, is through your senses, through your vision, through your um, uh, through your hearing, through the way you feel things, and so on. And it needs to interpret that and create the reality for you. And one of his arguments for why he doesn't think artificial intelligence can become conscious or have or be an intelligent being is that they don't have a body. So it's
For
just
now, isn't it? For now,
yeah, yes, exactly. It's
because we
just a
already
digital brain
recognize.
living
Yeah.
somewhere without a body. So they cannot experience the world. But we're seeing now humanoid robots.
And not only that, but for example, ChatGPT, if you open the camera and show the place, they can identify things. They can talk to you about that. For example, if you show you a scenario, for example, from in your house or even like a space, they can evaluate. And for example, this is a good room. You have a really nice chair, you have a nice painting, stuff like that. So they can identify stuff in the room. So, but how? Yeah, it's hard to understand if it's a conscience or if it's just understanding and replicating a standard pattern.
I'm a bit skeptical in that sense. I think they're just identifying patterns, because if you look at how we humans evolved and how we learned about those things, right? It's just because you understand that that's a, let's say, that the stove is hot because at some point you came closer and you felt it, or somebody
Yeah,
told you that it's going to burn you, it's going to hurt you when you're growing up. So you grow up with a lot of sorry, you grow up with a lot of context of the world. And these machines, their context of the world are basically what they learn in their training data, but they are two-dimensional. They
yeah,
don't have a
yeah,
body to experience that and learn from that
yeah,
experience. But that's changing. There was you basically mentioned multimodal LLMs, right, or multimodal artificial intelligence. And Google did this experiment. I don't know. I don't remember if we talked about, where they had robots, robot arms interacting with some objects, and they were learning by the way they perceive things and touching a piece like a rubber ball and then manipulating, and they were learning things that they didn't know in their training data.
yeah,
So giving these things bodies will accelerate their learnings.
yeah. Definitely. It's a bit
This
scary
is great.
because, but the things that are they conscious? Are they like living beings? Are they because it look like somehow because they are kind of if they because with the way we process things, we touch things, we experience, as you say, like we're using all the senses. If we give all the senses to the same to a machine, are they gonna be conscious somehow? Like, because they can interpret things as we do, and they can connect ideas. For example, if we say something, because they're already connecting ideas. If you give two sources and two things to the LLM to interpret, they will connect the dots, as we do as human beings. So where is the limit? Where is the boundary between conscience and it's such a hard question to do. But you know what I mean? Like, where is the boundary? Where does it come from? Like a machine to a conscious machine or a different level of intelligence? Like,
Let's wrap up the episode with an existential open question, right?
yeah,
So to tap on what you're actually saying, is what is the if an AI humanoid robot can understand things, can reason, it can take decisions by itself, and it's exactly, behaves and do, and it behaves and do exactly everything that we do. It looks like us. It does everything that we do. It seems that actually few things. what's the difference between us and them,
Yeah,
and what makes us humans and them not humans? I guess that's the big
yeah.
question. So
It
if
might be the
you
question that's gonna kill us.
if you want to answer that, sorry.
It might be the question that's gonna kill us, because if we do consider them humans, or they gonna do whatever they want, they're gonna have the free will that we gonna give them. So that's a bit dangerous, in a way.
So if you have if you have an answer for that question, please write to us. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, I think
Awesome.
that's it. Yeah, that's a good debate.
Cool. Let's wrap up. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It's free and helps us a lot. This way, it can help us also reach new listeners. Oh, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date on our latest episodes. If you have any questions for us, reach out to us at hello@humanaixp.com or connect with us on Instagram. Thanks for listening. See you next week.